Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video and the start of an exciting new series, Lost Apes of Europe. While this is a theoretical topic, it's not just science fiction. Some scientists are seriously considering the possibility of returning great apes to Europe. In this episode, we'll explore rewilding chimpanzees in Europe. Can they survive in Europe's climate? Where could they live? How might this impact their evolution and the ecosystem? Interactions with native and future wildlife. How would chimpanzees interact with animals like deer, wolves, wild horses, and even species that may one day be reintroduced, like elephants and rhinos? The bigger picture. Could this reshape Europe's ecosystems? And what challenges would it bring? And don't miss episode 2, coming in the next few days, where we'll dive into the full story of rewilding chimpanzees in Europe. But let me say this up front. It won't be anything like Planet of the Apes. So what do you think? Could chimpanzees have a future in Europe? Let's discuss in the comments. And if you're interested in rewilding, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, let's jump in. The Lost Apes of Europe refers to the primates, including great apes and early ancestors of modern chimpanzees, that once roamed the forests of Europe millions of years ago, but later went extinct. Europe was home to a variety of apes and primates during the Miocene epoch, before 23 to 5 million years ago. Dryopithecus, 12-9 million years ago, a genus of great apes that lived in what is now France, Spain, Germany, and Hungary. It was closely related to both modern chimpanzees and gorillas. Pierolapithecus, about 12.5 million years ago, discovered in Spain. This ape might be a common ancestor of modern great apes, including chimpanzees and humans. Anadaluvius, about 8.7 million years ago, found in Turkey, this ape had similarities to African great apes, suggesting a possible migration from Europe to Africa. Aurenopithecus, about 9 million years ago, an ape from Greece that had strong jaws and teeth adapted for eating tough foods. Some researchers believe it could be an ancestor of modern African apes. The great apes of Europe disappeared before the end of the Miocene epoch, and scientists believe several factors led to their extinction. The Miocene epoch saw periods of global cooling, which led to the drying of European forests. Since many of these apes were adapted to forested environments, they struggled to survive as forests shrank. The shift from dense forests to open woodlands and grasslands made it harder for tree-dwelling apes to find food and shelter. As forests declined, apes may have faced competition with other primates, early hominins, and even some mammal species better suited to open landscapes. Some scientists suggest that early great apes migrated from Europe to Africa before European populations went extinct. Fossil evidence hints that ancestors of modern chimpanzees and gorillas may have originated in Europe and later moved to Africa, where they thrived in more stable environments. When did chimpanzees, like apes, disappear from Europe? Chimpanzee-like apes, such as Dryopithecus, disappeared from Europe around 9-7 million years ago. Modern chimpanzees, pan-troglodytes, are believed to have evolved in Africa after this period. Could apes ever return to Europe? Technically, chimpanzees and other great apes could survive in certain parts of southern Europe, for example, Spain, Italy, and the Balkans, if introduced. Some conservationists have even suggested rewilding projects, but there is no serious movement to reintroduce great apes to Europe at this time. Chimpanzee biology. Chimpanzees, pan-troglodytes, are one of our closest living relatives, sharing approximately 98.8% of their DNA with humans. Here are some key aspects of their biology. Adult chimpanzees can weigh between 40 to 70 kilograms, 88 to 154 pounds, with males typically being larger than females. They have black or dark brown fur, and their faces are typically bare with light-colored skin. Native to tropical forests and savannas of West and Central Africa, chimpanzees prefer areas with dense vegetation, rivers, and trees for foraging and nesting. They are largely arboreal, tree-dwelling, but also spend time on the ground. Chimpanzees are omnivores. Their diet mainly consists of fruits, leaves, seeds, insects, and occasionally smaller mammals. They are known to hunt in groups, targeting monkeys, especially colobus monkeys. Chimpanzees live in communities ranging from 20 to 150 individuals, with complex social structures. There is usually a dominant male, alpha, leading the group, but the social bonds between females are also important. They communicate using vocalizations, body language, and facial expressions. They can produce different types of calls, including grunts, hoots, and screams. Chimpanzees show behaviors that resemble the foundations of religious thought, such as ritualistic displays at waterfalls, fascination with fire, and mourning their dead. Some researchers suggest these behaviors reflect awe, curiosity, or early spiritual awareness. While chimps don't have organized religion, their emotional depth and social bonds hint at the cognitive roots of human spirituality. Chimpanzees are highly intelligent and are known to use tools for tasks like cracking nuts, using sticks to fish for termites, and even using leaves as sponges to soak up water. Chimpanzees have been observed using spears to hunt, particularly in West Africa, where they craft sharpened sticks to stab bush babies and small mammals. If rewilded in Europe, chimps might adapt similar behaviors to hunt small mammals like rabbits or rodents. This could impact local wildlife, potentially altering predator-prey dynamics. Their intelligence and tool use could make them formidable hunters, increasing their impact on ecosystems compared to other primates. Rewilding chimpanzees in Europe would involve introducing a population into a habitat where they once roamed, before their extinction from the continent millions of years ago. Why Europe might need chimpanzees? Reintroducing chimpanzees could help restore biodiversity in European ecosystems. As an important part of their native environments in Africa, chimpanzees help regulate plant and insect populations, spreading seeds and contributing to forest regeneration. They could play a similar role in European forests, aiding in the regeneration of plants and the maintenance of healthy ecosystems. Europe was once home to a variety of great apes, including early ancestors of modern chimpanzees. Reintroducing chimpanzees could help to restore an important part of Europe's ecological heritage. While this wouldn't be the same as reviving extinct species, it could restore some evolutionary continuity in the region's ecosystems. Rewilding chimpanzees could bring attention to the need for wildlife conservation, especially for endangered species. It would highlight the ongoing plight of chimpanzees and other great apes who are endangered in the wild. Such an initiative could raise awareness and support for conservation efforts worldwide. Introducing chimpanzees into European wilderness could offer invaluable educational experiences for people about primates, human evolution, and environmental protection. It could be an opportunity for research and a source of greater appreciation for wildlife. Chimpanzees are among our closest living relatives, and studying them in a European context could provide new insights into human evolution. The opportunity to study how chimpanzees adapt to different environments could deepen our understanding of their behavior, physiology, and intelligence. Europe has a rich history of studying and interpreting the relationship between humans and other primates. Reintroducing chimpanzees could enhance Europe's cultural engagement with its evolutionary past and deepen the connection between humans and nature. Why Europe does not need chimpanzees. Chimpanzees are not naturally part of Europe's ecosystems. Introducing them could disrupt native wildlife, compete for resources, and create unforeseen ecological consequences. Europe, especially in the north, is too cold for chimpanzees. Chimps are highly intelligent and can be dangerous. They could come into conflict with humans, especially if they wander into villages or cities in search of food. Great apes can carry and contract many human diseases, and vice versa. A wild population in Europe could create health risks for both humans and local wildlife, but before chimpanzees are released into the wild, they are isolated to rule out infectious diseases that can infect humans and vice versa. This way we can ensure that the chimpanzee population is healthy from infectious diseases, as well as humans and other wildlife. Surviving winter in Europe. Chimpanzees are not naturally adapted to cold climates, so their survival in European winters would depend on several factors. Shelter. In their natural habitats in Africa, chimpanzees build nests in trees from branches and leaves. In colder climates, they would need to find or create shelter that protects them from snow, rain, and freezing temperatures. This might include nesting in caves, dense shrubs, or thick trees with sufficient canopy cover. Chimpanzees are social animals and could benefit from group living in colder climates, as this might help with warmth. Huddling together could allow them to conserve heat, much like how other primates in cold areas like the Japanese macaques rely on social warmth. Food sources. In winter, natural food sources like fruits would be scarce. Chimps would need to rely more on bark, roots, nuts, and possibly insects, which can be harder to find in winter. They might also scavenge more or venture into human-populated areas for food, potentially causing conflicts. Unlike some other mammals, chimpanzees do not hibernate. Therefore, they would need to be active throughout the winter, which would put pressure on them to find enough food and shelter to survive. Impact on evolution. If chimpanzees were reintroduced to Europe, their evolution would likely be influenced by several factors, including climate, habitat, and food availability. Over time, chimpanzees in Europe could develop genetic adaptations to cold climates, possibly leading to thicker fur, smaller body size to conserve heat, or changes in their behavior to cope with winter challenges. This process, however, would take many generations and depend on the size of the population and the selective pressures they face. They might also evolve more cooperative behaviors or new strategies for dealing with food scarcity, such as caching food for the winter or forming tighter social bonds to survive. In response to limited food in winter, chimpanzees could develop a more flexible diet, potentially even becoming more opportunistic omnivores, including eating more meat or scavenging. Their foraging behavior would likely adapt as well. Evolution might also be shaped by interactions with other animals in Europe, including predators, competition for resources, and diseases that chimpanzees wouldn't have encountered in their native African range. These new pressures could lead to changes in behavior or morphology. Chimpanzees have been shown to exhibit cultural behaviors, such as tool use and social learning. In Europe, these behaviors could evolve further as they adapt to new challenges and environments. For example, tool use for accessing food in winter might become more sophisticated. Rewilding chimpanzees in Europe would present numerous challenges, particularly due to the cold climate and the adaptations they would need to survive winter. It would also influence their evolutionary trajectory, possibly leading to changes in physical traits, behavior, and social structure. However, without careful management and consideration of the ecological impact, the success of such an initiative could be uncertain. Rewilding chimpanzees in Europe would involve carefully selecting regions that provide suitable habitats for their survival and where they could thrive with minimal human conflict. The southern parts of Europe, particularly regions with warmer climates and dense forests, could be ideal for rewilding chimpanzees. These areas offer shelter, food resources, and milder winters compared to northern Europe. The Sierra de Cazorla or Sierra de Grazalema in southern Spain have dense forests and would provide good habitats. The Mediterranean climate in these areas is milder than in other parts of Europe. The Apennine Mountains and parts of Sardinia could offer forests and natural shelters that chimpanzees would need. The climate is warmer in the southern parts, which is more similar to their natural environment. Countries like Albania, Bosnia, and Herzegovina, and Greece have rich forested areas that might be suitable. Greece, for example, has a Mediterranean climate with mild winters and dense forests. Southern France, particularly regions like Provence and the Pyrenees Mountains, has a mild climate and diverse ecosystems. These areas could offer good shelter and ample food sources for chimpanzees. A region with dense forests, mountains, and rivers, the Pyrenees would allow chimpanzees to maintain their arboreal lifestyle while also giving access to the ground for foraging and nesting. The Alentejo region in Portugal, with its forests and mild climate, might offer a suitable environment. The warm Mediterranean climate could help chimpanzees cope with colder weather during the winter, though they would still face challenges from harsher conditions. Some areas in the Balkans, like parts of Bosnia, Serbia, and North Macedonia, have temperate forests that could serve as a new home for chimpanzees. These regions have a mixture of temperate climate and abundant wildlife. Croatia's forests, particularly around Plitvice Lakes National Park, are rich in biodiversity. Although the winters can be cold, the density of the forests might offer chimpanzees some protection. The Carpathian Mountains in Romania are home to a variety of wildlife and dense forests. The region is less populated, and chimpanzees could potentially find both shelter and food. However, Romania does experience harsh winters, so any rewilding efforts would need to take the cold into consideration. Chimpanzees are omnivores, meaning they have a varied diet that includes both plant-based and animal-based food. In the wild, chimpanzees primarily eat fruits, leaves, seeds, and flowers, but they will also hunt for meat, particularly in the form of smaller animals like insects, monkeys, and occasionally larger mammals, such as antelopes. Their hunting behavior is often cooperative, and they use tools like sticks and stones to aid in capturing prey. Here's how chimpanzees might interact with various animals in Europe, especially in the context of potential rewilding efforts. Chimpanzees are not typically predators of large herbivores like deer, but they might scavenge on deer carcasses or interact with them in some way. They could also potentially pose a threat to young or weak deer if there is a significant food shortage. Chimpanzees might share forested habitats with deer, and while they would likely avoid direct conflict, they could compete for certain food resources like fruits or vegetation. However, chimpanzees are unlikely to actively hunt deer due to their size and social structure, unless they form groups to hunt smaller, vulnerable animals. Chimpanzees might prey on wild boar, particularly piglets. Wild boar are strong animals, but the agility and intelligence of chimpanzees might allow them to target smaller, weaker individuals. Chimpanzees could avoid adult wild boars due to their size and aggression, but they might scavenge on dead boar or attack young ones. However, adult boars are formidable, and a direct confrontation could be dangerous for the chimpanzees. Wild horses primarily graze on grass and plants, which are not a significant part of chimpanzees' diet, so direct competition is unlikely. Chimpanzees are unlikely to hunt wild horses, but could encounter them in the forest or grassland. Interaction might be minimal, with chimpanzees avoiding direct conflict with large herbivores like horses. However, there could be competition for shared food sources, particularly fruits and shrubs. Kulan, wild asses, are herbivores that feed on grasses and shrubs. Chimpanzees and kulan would not compete directly for food unless there was a significant food shortage. There is likely to be minimal interaction between chimpanzees and kulan. The size and strength of the kulan would discourage chimpanzees from attacking them, and their habitats might not overlap too much in the wild. Wild cattle are large herbivores, and chimpanzees would not be able to hunt them. However, there may be some competition for plant-based food. Chimpanzees are unlikely to pose a threat to wild cattle due to the large size and strength of these animals. Instead, chimpanzees would likely avoid them, with interactions primarily being peaceful or minimal, unless they came into direct contact over shared food resources. European bison are also herbivores and would not directly compete with chimpanzees for food. However, the competition for certain fruits, nuts, or plants could exist in overlapping habitats. Chimpanzees are unlikely to hunt bison, but could scavenge from bison carcasses if they found them. The size of bison would make them largely safe from chimpanzee predation, and interactions would likely be peaceful, with chimpanzees keeping a safe distance from such large animals. Water buffaloes are large herbivores that graze on grasses and aquatic vegetation. Chimpanzees typically consume fruit, leaves, and occasional meat, so there is minimal overlap in diet. Chimpanzees are unlikely to pose a direct threat to water buffaloes due to the size difference. Water buffaloes are social animals and may form herds, which would discourage chimpanzees from attacking. However, chimpanzees could encounter them in shared habitats, and they may have minor competition for vegetation. The interactions would likely be peaceful, with chimpanzees avoiding conflict due to the buffalo's strength and size. Mouflons primarily graze on grasses and shrubs. They are not a primary food source for chimpanzees, though there could be competition for vegetation. Chimpanzees might interact with mouflons if their paths cross, but they would not typically hunt them. There could be minor competition for shared resources, particularly fruits or leaves, but direct conflict is unlikely. Chamois are agile herbivores that live in mountainous terrain. They are not a food source for chimpanzees, but might share some plant-based food with them in overlapping habitats. Chimpanzees would likely avoid interacting with chamois due to their size and agility. There is little to no predation risk for chamois from chimpanzees, and they would probably keep to higher altitudes, away from forested areas where chimpanzees might reside. Beavers are herbivores that feed on tree bark, leaves, and aquatic plants. Chimpanzees and beavers would not compete directly for food, as they occupy different ecological niches. Chimpanzees could encounter beavers in forested or riparian habitats, where they might observe beavers' tree-cutting activities. Beavers, being nocturnal, are unlikely to directly interact with chimpanzees, and any interaction would likely be peaceful. There is no significant predation risk between the two species. Otters are carnivorous and feed on small aquatic animals like fish, amphibians, and crustaceans. Chimpanzees do eat meat, including small animals and insects, but they would not typically target otters as prey. Chimpanzees might occasionally scavenge fish or other small animals that otters have caught. However, otters are typically well adapted to aquatic environments, while chimpanzees live in forested areas. As such, their interactions would likely be minimal, and any contact would be driven by competition for aquatic resources, not direct predation. Chimpanzees are known to hunt small mammals, including rodents and primates, especially in areas where food is scarce. Small mammals might also share food sources like fruits, nuts, and seeds with chimpanzees. Chimpanzees could actively hunt small mammals, particularly if they are part of a social hunting group. Small mammals might be preyed upon by chimpanzees, but they are also likely to coexist in the same environment, avoiding larger animals and seeking shelter in burrows or trees. Chimpanzees may not actively hunt birds, but will scavenge bird eggs or young birds if they come across them. They are also likely to consume fruit and seeds that birds might rely on as well. Chimpanzees are capable of climbing trees and might take advantage of bird nests, particularly in times of scarcity. However, they are unlikely to target adult birds unless they are small or vulnerable. The relationship with birds would mostly revolve around competition for food rather than predation. Birds of prey, such as eagles and hawks, primarily hunt small mammals and birds. Chimpanzees are unlikely to be directly affected by birds of prey. However, large birds of prey might see young chimpanzees as potential prey. On the flip side, chimpanzees could pose a threat to smaller birds of prey, especially those hunting near the forest floor. While interactions are minimal, birds of prey may avoid areas where chimpanzees are present due to the threat they could pose to smaller birds. Chimpanzees are likely to avoid venomous reptiles such as snakes, as they are intelligent and learn to stay away from danger. However, if they encounter a non-venomous snake, they might exhibit curiosity or even attempt to catch and eat it, especially if it's smaller and easier to overpower. Lizards and smaller reptiles are unlikely to be seen as food by chimps unless they're easily accessible. Chimpanzees will consume a wide variety of foods, including amphibians when available. Frogs, toads, and other small amphibians could form part of their diet, especially in aquatic environments or during times of scarcity. Chimpanzees may actively hunt and consume amphibians, particularly frogs or small toads, that are abundant in the environment. Amphibians would likely avoid direct contact with chimpanzees, but they might share some of the same habitats, particularly in wetlands or forested areas with water sources. Elephants and chimpanzees have different feeding strategies, with elephants being herbivores and chimpanzees consuming both plant and animal matter. Elephants do not pose a direct threat to chimpanzees, and chimpanzees would not hunt elephants. The interaction between chimpanzees and elephants would likely be peaceful, as elephants are much larger. However, chimpanzees could benefit from the presence of elephants in the ecosystem by scavenging from their carcasses or feeding on fruits disturbed by elephant activity. Indian rhinos are herbivores, and their feeding habits would not directly compete with chimpanzees. the large size and powerful nature of rhinos would make them mostly unapproachable for chimpanzees. Chimpanzees would avoid rhinos, and any interaction would likely be minimal. Rhinos could create disturbances in the environment that might affect chimpanzee habitats, but chimpanzees would avoid direct conflict. Hippos are primarily herbivores and graze on grasses. Chimpanzees and hippos are not likely to compete for food, as they occupy different ecological niches. There would be little interaction between chimpanzees and hippos, as hippos tend to stay in aquatic environments, and chimpanzees prefer forested areas. Hippos would pose no direct threat to chimpanzees, and vice versa. Wolves are apex predators that hunt in packs, primarily targeting large herbivores like deer and wild boar, though they also scavenge and might consume small mammals. Chimpanzees might occasionally hunt small mammals or scavenging meat, but their primary food sources are fruit, plants, and insects. Chimpanzees and wolves might occasionally compete for smaller prey, especially if resources are scarce, but their interactions would generally be indirect. Wolves would likely avoid direct conflict with chimpanzees because of the chimpanzee's strength and social structure. However, in rare cases, if wolves were hungry and had the opportunity, they might pose a threat to young chimpanzees or vulnerable individuals. Wolves' pack behavior and territorial nature might also create competition for space and resources. Feral dogs are opportunistic carnivores, eating anything from scavenged meat to small mammals, birds, and occasionally fruits. Their diet overlaps with chimpanzees' occasional meat-eating habits, particularly when they hunt small animals or scavenge. Feral dogs might compete with chimpanzees for small prey or food resources, especially in areas where food is scarce. Dogs tend to be more aggressive and social in packs, so a group of feral dogs could pose a potential threat to chimpanzees, especially if they target young or weakened individuals. However, chimpanzees are strong and territorial and would likely defend themselves, potentially leading to conflict. Chimpanzees might also scavenge from feral dog kills, especially if they come across a carcass. Golden jackals are opportunistic omnivores, eating fruits, small mammals, and birds, much like chimpanzees. They may also scavenge larger animal carcasses. Jackals and chimpanzees would likely avoid direct conflict, as jackals tend to be smaller and live in small packs. They might compete for similar food resources, particularly small mammals and scavenged meat. However, jackals are more likely to avoid chimpanzees due to their size and strength, and any interaction would likely be centered around food competition rather than direct predation. Red foxes are omnivores that eat small mammals, birds, fruits, and insects. Their diet overlaps with that of chimpanzees in terms of small mammals and fruits. Foxes and chimpanzees would likely share the same habitats without direct competition. Foxes are more agile and tend to avoid larger animals like chimpanzees. Chimpanzees might occasionally compete with foxes for small prey or fruit, but foxes are small enough that they are unlikely to be a threat to chimpanzees. Any interactions would likely be peaceful and focused on food competition. Brown bears are omnivores with a diet that includes large mammals, fish, berries, roots, and honey. While there is some overlap in plant-based food sources, brown bears are much larger and more aggressive predators than chimpanzees. Brown bears would likely pose a significant threat to chimpanzees, especially if they encounter each other while hunting or scavenging. Chimpanzees would likely avoid brown bears due to their size and strength. In the case of food competition, brown bears would dominate, as they are much larger and more powerful. However, chimpanzees might be able to avoid conflict by staying in their social groups and retreating when necessary. Lynxes are solitary carnivores that hunt small to medium-sized mammals, such as deer, rabbits, and hares. There may be some overlap in terms of small mammals, but lynxes typically avoid larger prey. Lynxes and chimpanzees would likely avoid direct competition, as lynxes are solitary hunters and chimpanzees are social. Lynxes might hunt small mammals that chimpanzees would not typically target, and vice versa. However, if food becomes scarce, there could be competition for smaller prey species. Chimpanzees are strong and territorial, so they might be able to defend themselves if threatened by a lynx. Generally, interactions would be rare. Wildcats, such as the European wildcat, prey on small mammals and birds. Their diet overlaps with chimpanzees in terms of small mammals and fruits. Wild cats and chimpanzees would have limited interaction, as they would not typically compete for the same prey. Wild cats are solitary and more focused on small animals, while chimpanzees hunt in groups and focus on a broader diet, including fruit and larger prey. The primary interactions would be indirect and involve competition for similar food sources. Persian leopards are apex predators that hunt medium-sized mammals such as deer, wild boar, and smaller animals. They would not typically target chimpanzees unless in extreme circumstances. Chimpanzees and Persian leopards could have conflicts over territory or food. Leopards would likely avoid direct confrontation with chimpanzees due to their strength, but they could pose a threat to young chimpanzees if they are vulnerable or unprotected. Both species might occasionally compete for large prey like wild boar or deer. Chimpanzees would likely avoid leopards and may even defend themselves aggressively if they feel threatened. Asiatic lions are apex predators that hunt large mammals like deer, antelope, and wild boar. They do not typically hunt primates but might scavenge on carcasses or take advantage of weakened individuals. Asiatic lions would likely pose a significant threat to chimpanzees, especially if they encountered young or isolated individuals. Lion size and strength would make them formidable opponents. However, chimpanzees are social and would likely be able to defend themselves as a group. Interactions would likely involve competition for large prey, with lions having the upper hand in direct conflict. Spotted hyenas are opportunistic carnivores that hunt in packs and scavenge large animal carcasses. They are capable of hunting large mammals and might overlap with chimpanzees in terms of scavenging and hunting smaller prey. Hyenas and chimpanzees could compete for similar food resources, particularly meat from smaller animals. Hyenas, being pack hunters, could pose a serious threat to chimpanzees if they encounter them, especially in food-scarce environments. However, chimpanzees are strong and social, and they may be able to defend themselves or avoid direct conflict. Interactions would likely be centered around food competition rather than direct predation. As we imagine a future where great apes roam Europe's forests once again, we must ask, is Europe ready for their return? Chimpanzees could play a vital role, dispersing seeds, controlling pests, and shaping landscapes. But with harsh winters, new predators, and a vastly different environment, their survival wouldn't be easy. Would they thrive in this new ecosystem, or struggle against Europe's established species? Rewilding is about more than reintroducing species, it's about restoring balance. But can Europe still support its great apes? Chimpanzees would interact with herbivores like wild boar, deer, and European bison, as well as apex predators like wolves, bears, and possibly future rewilded Asiatic lions. Their presence could change the ecosystem in profound ways, either restoring harmony or creating new challenges. Humans would also play a role. Would we coexist with chimpanzees, or would there be conflicts? The future of their reintroduction is uncertain, but the potential for transformation is immense. What do you think? Can chimpanzees make it in Europe's wild? Let us know in the comments. Subscribe for more on rewilding and conservation.